So, last time we saw some examples of metric spaces. I will give you some more examples. These are all standard examples. So, I will continue with examples. I lost track of the numbers. 14. Okay. This is the infinite dimensional versions of the examples we saw last time. So, what I will do is I will take X to be the set of all sequences such that all the terms are real and such that summation j equal to 1 to infinity mod xj to the power of p is less than n. So, we will take p greater than or equal to 1. Take p greater than or equal to 1 and consider all sequences for which the sum of the pth power is finite. Then for any two such sequences, for any x and y, in x we define the metric rho p x y now to be the sum j equal to 1 to infinity mod x j minus y j to the power of p power of 1 over p. Now, in order to verify that this is a metric, greater than or equal to is obvious, equal to 0 if and only if x equal to y is obvious. The distance between x and y is the same as y and x is obvious because again modulus is there, you can interchange x and y. The only thing is non-trivial is again triangle inequality, but we have the Minkowski inequality for such sequences also. So, to the fact that this is a metric is obvious. The triangle inequality being a consequence of Minkowski's inequality. So, therefore, this is a metric on that space on that set. So, x rho p is a metric space. For each p, you consider sequences for this is true, and for every p we get a new metric space p greater than or equal to 1. This metric space we shall denote by LPR. Now, I do not have to put the number of sequences there, that is obviously now it is infinite number of sequences. P stands for that the pth sum is finite and R stands for that the components are all real. Similarly, we have LPC. We can take all the components to be complex numbers. Okay. So, we have an infinite number of examples of metric space here. Okay. For each p we get one metric space. Now, what we will do is consider the collection of all sequences again. Okay, so probably such that the sequence is bounded. I will rewrite this. Okay, I will rewrite this a little bit shortly. What is meant by that the sequence is bounded? That means there exists an M such that mod xn is less than or equal to M. Of course, here xj's are all in R. Okay. So, bounded, this really means there exists an M that is such that mod xn is less than or equal to M for n. That is what is meant by saying that the sequence is bounded. So, the moment the sequence is bounded, there is something called the least upper bound. Okay. So, therefore, there exists a least upper bound for this sequence, which we denote by say nx. For the sequence, the least upper bound will denote by nx. Okay. So, we now consider the collection of all sequences which are bounded, real sequences which are bounded, and for any two such bounded sequences, we define the metric now rho infinity xy to be if xn is bounded, yn is bounded, xn minus yn is also bounded. So, you look at the least upper bound of x minus y. So, that is n of x minus y. Take the least upper bound of the sequence x minus y. Okay. Now, the fact that this is a metric is a trivial verification, there is no problem. There is no Minkowski also involved here. Okay. Straightforward modulus is less than or equal to the sum of the modulus is what is required. Okay. So, clearly this is a metric on X, the metric space X rho infinity is denoted by L infinity. L infinity R. Analogously, we have L infinity C. Okay. So, these are all the analogues of the n component spaces that we had, rho p and rho infinity. Now, we have the infinite number of components, but now we have to put some restriction that we are going to consider only those for which p power is finite, those are bounded. This. Okay. So, these are some examples which are from discrete. Still we are in the discrete situation only. Okay, the components are all discrete. Now we will go to some function spaces, real and so called function spaces. To do that, okay, so based on this itself I can give another example. This is what? Example 16. I don't think I ever successfully numbered examples in the sequence like this. Okay. Example 16. So, let us again consider the interval some an interval I in R. Take any interval I in R. I can take any set, any subset I of R, but take any interval I in R. So, in other words, I have the real the line. I am going to take some interval I. I am not saying it is closed interval, open interval, finite interval, infinite interval, anything. Any interval in R, then what I will look at again X is the collection of all functions f mapping I to R, that is real valued functions defined on the interval I. So, f of x for x in I is a real number. For every x in I, f of x is a real number. So, I have a real valued function defined on the interval I such that f of x, f is bounded. What do we mean by saying that f is bounded? That means there exists a number m such that f of x in modulus is less than or equal to m for all x. That is, just like the sequences, there exists m such that mod fx is less than or equal to m for every x in I. And the moment it is bounded, it will have a least upper bound. So, we denote the least upper bound, we denote the least upper bound of f by nf. There it was nx, now it is nf. There it was sequence, now it is a function. Same story again for f and g in this collection. Take any two bounded functions, we define the metric, we define rho fg as the least upper bound of f minus g. Again, very easy to verify that it is a metric. The three conditions, angular inequality is only one, but these are all moduli, so they follow easily. Clearly, this is a metric on x. We denote x rho by say BRI. B stands for bounded, R stands for real valued, I stands for the domain of definition. So, bounded real valued functions on the interval I. Analogously, we can define complex valued functions on the interval. Similarly, we have the metric space B E I. Oh, this is not precisely the L infinity ad, that LP, LR, L infinity are a little bit tricky, but we will get around that in a different way. Okay, instead of introducing measure theory to define all those things, we shall try to come around it at least intuitively by some other means. Okay. Now, before I go to the next example, as I said last time, I will have to review some properties of continuous functions. Okay. So, recall. See, the word recall means that you already know. If you do not know, pretend you know, and just of course I know this, sort of thing. Okay. Just recall. So, suppose I have so let A B be a finite closed, let me call it as I, closed interval in R. So, I have the real line A B. So, I have a finite closed interval in A B. Then I look at a function which is defined in this, so real valued function in the interval. So, for all x, f of x, for all x in A B, f of x makes sense and is a real number. Now, I say f is continuous at a point t belonging to AB if. So, at a point t, let us first think of the point t in the inside the interval, not the boundary points. Okay, in the interval t. So, I am looking at a point. First, let us consider a point in the open interval without boundary points. So, this continuous point t in AB if, what does mean? What do we mean? That is, there is a point, there is a whole neighborhood around this point where the values will be close enough to the value of f t. How close? Well, depending on how close you want, I will tell you how close you should stay to t. So, given any error tolerance limit, that is the error that you accept. Within that tolerance limit, given any tolerance limit, there is like playing cards, as I say. You play the card epsilon, then I have a reply card called delta. So, for every epsilon, there is a delta such that now you stay within that delta distance from t, such that whenever x is in t minus delta to t plus delta, the value will lie in f of t minus epsilon to f of t plus epsilon. If this fellow stays within that delta distance, I can correspondingly control the values to be within the error that you want. So, the error can be controlled provided you make the variable stay close to the point t. So, usually this is written as, that is, mod x minus t less than delta implies mod fx minus ft is less than epsilon. Okay. The error will be within less than epsilon if x is within an error of delta from t. This is what is meant by saying the function f is continuous at the point t. Now, at the end points, what should I do? If I am here, I can't talk about to the right. So, I will take only the points between b minus delta to b. On this side, I will consider only from a to a plus delta. That is all, there is only difference. So, I have to intersect this with the interval, then it takes care of the whole thing. So, okay, at right end point, only left continuous, and left end point only right continuous. That is all we can talk about. The left end point can be approached only from the right, and the right end point can be approached only from the left. So, that is what is meant by continuity at a point. If it is continuous at all the points, we say it is continuous on the interval I. So, if f is continuous, at every t belong to AB, then we say f is continuous on I. If it continues at every point in the interval, then we say it's continuous on I. So, we are going to look at an interval, finite, closed, and we are going to look at a function which is continuous on that interval. So, let f mapping I to R be continuous in the interval I. That means it is continuous at every point in the interval. So, I am going to look at a continuous function because that is what everybody learns first. The more complicated functions come later. Okay, so let us look at a continuous function. Such a function has many nice properties, many nice properties, but I am going to list only one or two of them which we will use immediately. As we need more, we will take more of those properties. The first thing that I will observe is the following: some properties of f. So, when we have such a function f, we will look at some properties. As I said last time, one of the most important properties is that it has a max and a min. Okay. So, what does that mean? F has a max and a min. That is, so here is the interval I, f, it takes it to R. What we mean is, there is a point at which the value is maximum and there is a point at which the value is minimum. That is, there exist points x naught and y naught in the interval such that the value at any point is dominated by this. So, this is the max and the value at x naught is dominated by x, that is the minimum for every x in I. So, if you think of that, drawing the graph, it stays within a band. The band is between fx naught to fy naught. Those two lines, if you draw, the curve will lie within that band. So, for example, if you now think of drawing the graph, suppose this is fx naught and that is fy naught and that is a and that is b, the values of the function will be scattered within that band only, nowhere else. That is what is meant by it has a max and a min, and somewhere it will go and hit that line and somewhere else it will also hit that line. It will not cross but hit. It will not cross above but hit, and everywhere else it stays inside. So, there are points at which it may hit this boundary, but at never cross. At all other points it will stay inside the band. That is what is meant by saying it has a max and a min. Okay, that is the first simple property. What are all the properties that I don't remember what I may use. Another important property, these are all topological also. So, we may probably note this, we may use them in a more general context later. Another important property is, I know now the values of the function have to lie between fx naught and fy naught. The value fx naught is attained, the value fy naught is attained. What about all the values in between? They are all attained. That is, for every value between fx naught and fy naught, there will be a point t at which value is attained. So, what does that mean? That is called the intermediate value property. If it attains two values, everything in between it is attained. Okay. So, if well, first of all, I will state this intermediate value property. If f of x, if t1, t2 belong to I and f of t1 not equal to f of t2. Okay. Suppose I have 2 points at which it attains 2 values. So, what does that mean? So, I have here t1, here t2, that is the value f of t1 and that is the value f. Without loss of generality, assume that f of t1 is less than f of t2, otherwise that line comes this side, this line goes that side. So, now let us see So, this is the height f of t1 and that is the height f of t2. Now, take some point in between, then there will be a point in between here such that that value will be exactly equal to that. So, that is what we really mean as intermediate value. If it takes two values, every value in between intermediate is also taken. Okay. So, let us write that if f of t1 is not equal to f of t2, then, so without loss of generality, let f of t1 be less than f of t2, then there exists a point t naught. So, then for every alpha such that f of t1 is less than alpha less than f of t2, intermediate value, there exists a point x alpha in the interval t1 t2 between t1 and t2 such that f of x alpha is equal to alpha. So, this is two values are attained, in between values are also attained in between. Between t1 and t2, the values between ft1 and ft2 will be attained. What does that lead to? Let us look at many consequences of this. The first property said it cannot go that, but it will hit it. It cannot go below this, it will hit it. But now this has hit that, it has hit that. Therefore, it has hit everything between. So, therefore, the range of the function will be precisely the interval f x naught to y naught, which is again closed. So, therefore, f maps a finite closed interval to a finite closed interval if it is continuous. So, therefore, 1 and 2 give imply that all values between f x naught and f y naught are attained and range of f is equal to closed interval f x naught. So, continuous function maps a finite closed interval to a finite closed interval precisely. Okay. This one point. That's one point I will use, and then it was 3, 4. Suppose at some point the value is positive. Okay, so, what happens is the following. Suppose T naught belongs to I and f of T naught is strictly positive. Okay. What does that mean? Here is the interval A, B, there is a point T naught. If you mark the value, it lies above the x axis, strictly positive value at that point. Okay. So, intuitively, if you are saying drawing the function, before that and after that also it should have been above that x axis. Then it can be proved analytically using the definition, this has to be proved. Then there exists a delta positive such that f of x is also positive for every x in that interval. So, there will be a small interval about it in which the graph will be lying completely above the x axis. This is the typical property of continuous function, which can be proved purely using the definition of continuity. Okay. And similar result for if it is negative at a point, in some neighborhood it should remain negative. And similarly, and if T1 belongs to I and f of T1 is less than 0, then there exists a delta positive such that mod fx, fx is less than 0 for every x, T naught minus delta, T1 minus delta to T1. Okay. So, that is a continuous function maintains its sign in a neighborhood. If it is positive at a point, it maintains that positive sign in a neighborhood. If it is negative at a point, it maintains that negative sign in a neighborhood. It cannot suddenly jump from positive to negative. Okay. One more property, probably this is a little bit testing. Okay. Of course, let me just make integral a to b f of t dt is well defined. The Riemann integral. Let us for the moment stick to the Riemann integral. I suppose you know what is meant by Riemann, the usual Riemann integral. That is very Indian. What is usual Riemann integral? So go and look up quickly what is Riemann integral. Will not for the moment even talk about Lebesgue integral or any other integral, Stieltjes integral, nothing, only Riemann integral will talk. Okay. Now, consider f of t such that f of x is greater than or equal to 0 for every x in I. What does that mean? That function never goes below the x-axis. The graph will always be above the x-axis or touching the x-axis, but never come below the x-axis. Non-negative function. F of x is a non-negative function. It never becomes negative. Okay. Claim. Okay. I am going to make a claim. Integral a to b f of x dx is equal to 0 if and only if f is the 0 function. What does f is 0 mean? 0 function means at all the points the value is 0. So, the integral will be 0 if and only if the integral of a non-negative function will be 0 if and only if the function itself is 0. Why is that so? Intuitively, for example, we want to prove that f is 0. This is exactly the proof. If f is 0, suppose f is not 0. This way it is obvious. If f is 0, that is obviously 0. So, we have to prove that the integral is 0 implies f is 0. Suppose f is not 0. The only choice is it must be strictly positive. The moment it is strictly positive, where? What is meant by f is 0? What is meant by this? F is 0 at all the points. This is the 0 function. So, if it is not the 0 function, at least at one point it will be positive. If it is positive at one point in a neighborhood, it is positive. So, therefore, what happens to the area? That will become strictly positive. Therefore, the integral will become strictly positive, which is a contradiction. That is all the common sense idea is. So, if the function f of x dx equal to 0, if and only if f is equal to 0. So, in particular, can I say this? limits against we are interested only in p greater than or equal to 1. So, I can still say that because fx to the power of p, it is still non-negative and it is still continuous, and therefore I can call this as gx dx. Gx is non-negative, gx dx is 0 if and only if gx is 0. If gx is 0, or if and only if fx is 0. Okay. So, therefore, this also we can study. Now, I am going to push further. Suppose now f is continuous on AB and mod fx dx is equal to 0. So, if fx is continuous, mod fx is continuous, therefore, mod fx if I call as g, g is a non-negative function, integral is 0, therefore, g must be the 0 function, that means mod fx is 0 for all x, which means fx is 0 for all x, that means f is the 0 function. So, this is 0 if and only f is the 0 function. And now again the same idea I can do that and put a p there. Again the same story will repeat. So, mod fx to the power of p dx equal to 0 if and only if f is equal to 0, p greater than or equal to 1. So, these are some of the things that for the time being I will state. There are many more interesting properties that we can go on and on. Okay. What are we now? Now I got go to metric space example number what? Even before that, let me for the time being. So, now what I am going to do is, let us look at a function f mapping I to R. Again, I was the closed finite interval a b. All these discussions are on the closed interval a b. So, suppose I have a continuous function. So, f is continuous on I, and then mod fx therefore is continuous, and therefore mod fx has a maximum and a minimum, and therefore there exists an m such that mod fx, okay, there exists a y naught in I such that mod fxy is less than or equal to mod fy naught for every x in I. Of course, mod fx is always positive. Okay. Now, this mod fy naught therefore becomes the maximum of mod fx as x varies over. Okay. And this I will call as nf. I use some other word nf somewhere else, but now I am going to use the word nf for this. This is a number associated with the function f. Okay. So, if we have a continuous function f on the closed finite interval I, then the function mod f is also continuous, and the maximum of this mod fx is denoted by n of f. Now, we have, I think I can close this door, it's banging, or I should keep it open. Maybe better to keep it open, and may get some breeze. Okay. So, now what I am going to do is, I am going to consider x to be the collection of all continuous functions real valued on the interval I equal to a b. Now we look at every possible continuous function. Then for any two such functions, we define first example as rho fg, and I call it as rho infinity g to be. Now look at the function f minus g, that is also continuous, and therefore I can look at n of f minus g. That is, look at the difference function, that is also continuous, look at its modulus, that is also continuous, look at the maximum of that difference modulus function, and that we will call it as the rho of infinity of fg. Then rho infinity fg is a metric. Again, you have to verify all those simple axioms. Whenever you have modulus things coming in, it is very easy to verify the triangle inequality. It is a metric on X, and the metric space X rho infinity will be denoted by P R A B infinity. C stands for continuous, R stands for real valued, A B is the interval where they defined, infinity refers to the metric that we are using. Now this is not standard notation. I just thought a fraction of a second before that I will use this notation. So if I forget, please remember me, okay, remind me that this is the notation I used. Now similarly, okay, let even before that. Now exactly the same way I can use the integral matrix as we did for the sequences, where instead of taking maximum of the difference in the coordinates, we looked at xi minus yi to the power of p and summed. Now the sum will become integral. So on x for p greater than or equal to 1, we can also have metric rho p f g to be equal to integral a to b mod fx minus gx to the power of p dx to the power of 1 over p. Except now the discrete sum has been replaced by the integral in these cases. The metric space, again you will get the standard Minkowski's inequality to prove the triangle. Analogous to sequences, we have the Minkowski's inequality for functions. Then we have metric space x rho p, we denote is denoted by C R A B P. And similarly, we can replace R by C. We can have a complex valued functions also. So analogously, we have C C P A B for P greater than 1 and C C infinity. Okay. So now we have several examples including continuous functions now. So now we have therefore a whole collection of metric spaces which will go on increasing only. The number of examples will go on increasing as we learn more and more. Okay, so now that we have got so many examples, we can now many times when you see a particular concept, you can see what does it mean to each one of these. Sometimes it will be very difficult, but that will make you understand things a little better. Okay, so now we are going to look at the structure, in a sense, various structures that are available of a metric space. Now, most of these will be generalizations of what we experience in 1 and 2 and 3 dimensions. Okay, these will all be generalizations. But when we move from these to the abstract things, certain strange things may happen, because now the real number properties will be lost, the plane properties will be lost, the 3 space property may be lost. So, in the abstract setup, some of the things which we get in these places by the sheer property of the real numbers will be lost, and so we may get a certain stranger results than what we expected. So, to start with, let us look at one simple notion. Okay, let us take R1, that is the set of real numbers, and let us take R2. These are two simple spaces where we can draw picture and see. 3 dimension itself, it is very difficult to draw picture. So, let us look at these 2 examples and then generalize this. And in R1, let us take the usual metric. What is the usual metric? Rho xy is mod x minus 1. In R2, let us take the usual metric, that is rho 2 xy, which is square root of mod x1 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus y2 squared. So, therefore, this metric space is what I called as L2 2R. This 2 refers to the square root, this 2 refers to 2 components. This, if there are n components, I would have written L2 sub n R. So, let us take these 2 examples. This is our plane with the usual distance, and this is our real line with the usual distance. Take any point in R in this metric space. Let us call it as x. Similarly, take in the plane any point, call this as x naught. Of course, its coordinates will be x naught, y naught. Any point will have 2 coordinates. So, let us take a point in one of these. Now, let us look at, take a radius r and look at all those fellows who are symmetrically situated within a distance of r from. So, let us, we are going to look at, by the way, I always get confused. When I was in school, I learnt the following: a circle with center P is the set of all those points which a distance r from the center P. A circle of radius r and center P is the set of all those points which are at a distance r from P. So, what they told me was the following: this is the center, you look at all those points which are at a distance r from the P. So, that means they meant right. Then the next class they taught the area of the circle is pi r squared. If that is the circle, it has no area. It is a linear thing. Okay. So I used to fight with my teacher, and then said, of course, he said, no, use this formula right, otherwise you won't get marks. Okay. So therefore, what I am going to look at is, I will call this as the circle and call this as the disk. When I say the disk, I mean the. So therefore, let us look at all the points inside the circle. The circle is that, I am going to look at all the points inside the circle. So that I will denote by S or X naught, I will call it X naught. That is the set of all the points whose distance from x naught is less than r. Distance is less than, actually I will call it more specifically, I will call it probably better notation will BR. You will see why. BR x naught. So therefore, here it means what? Draw a circle of radius r and look at all these points which are inside that circle. That is what my BR x naught is. Now what will be BR x naught in this case? It will be only the interval of radius r. So this open interval is what BR x naught is. What will it be in 3 dimensions with the usual metric? That is, I will call it as L23R. In that case, it will be it is a whole, that is why the word ball. Okay, it is a ball of radius r. So BR x naught is the ball of radius or about x naught. That is why the word ball is used. And it is called the open ball because the surface is not included. When it becomes equal to r, it is removed. Okay. So this is the notion of an open ball around a point. Now this notion involves only the idea of distance, nothing else. The point and all points whose distance from that is less than r. So whenever we have the notion of distance, we can immediately introduce the notion of the open ball about that point. So we now generalize this. Let X rho be any metric space and x naught a point in that metric space, then for r greater than 0, we denote BR x naught to be, this is the definition or a notation, to be all those points such that their distance is less than r. That is called the open ball. Called the open ball of radius r about x naught. Okay. So to define the sphere and all, we needed only the notion of a distance, and we shall denote by this notion. That means the top is also, lid is also included. That is the set of all points that rho x naught is less than or equal to r. Now we will talk properly. The top alone is what is called the sphere. Right? The top alone is called the sphere. the boundary. This by definition is the set of all x in X such that rho x x naught is equal to. Okay, so this union this is equal to this. The lid plus the hollow is equal to the closed ball. Okay, so this is a simple notation which is carried over from open interval, circle and disk to the sphere and the ball and so on and so forth. Now we can talk about this in any metric space. So in every metric space we have the notion of the open ball of R about a point, closed ball, this is the closed ball of radius r about x naught, and it is called the sphere of radius r about the point x naught. Okay. These are the standard notes. So wherever you have a notion of a distance in the context of the metric distance that we define, we can always talk about these three basic ideas. Okay. So this gives you the idea of neighborhood. These fellows are within a neighborhood of that is a point place, and this is the local neighborhood of that point. So this is the neighborhood is the notion or the word topography. That's why this is a topological idea. From here comes the notion of neighborhoods is the notion of topology. So this is a notion which is going to bring us the topological ideas in mathematics. Okay. So now let us look at what this notion gives us. So therefore in every, okay, let me first give one or two examples of this situation. So in L to R, BR means the disk, BR closure means including the circle, SR means circle. Okay. Now let us look at this metric space. What does this mean? This is, in this space the carrier set is again R2 and the metric is mod x1 minus y1 plus mod x2 minus y2. Now this is referred to as Washington DC metric. What this says is the roads are all in horizontal or vertical. If you want to travel from one point to another point, you can travel only horizontal and vertical distances. That mod x1 minus y1 says the total horizontal distance you have traveled. Mod x2 minus y2 says the total vertical distance you have traveled. So that will be the total distance you have traveled in these roads. Okay, but it's not true that the Washington roads are so straight. I had a professor, I knew a professor who was a great friend of mine who is no more, who is very much senior to me. He used to be very fond of the Pondicherry ashram, Aurobindo ashram. He was the head of the department at Central University of Hyderabad, Madurai University, etc. After retirement, he settled in Pondicherry. He used to call this the Pondicherry metric. But I have not seen it so carefully. The roads are very straight, horizontal. This is certainly not Bangalore metric. Okay, so now let us look at this metric and let us take, for example, x naught to be the origin. So my point is that is my point x naught. Okay. Now let us take r to be 1 and then look at b1 x naught. How does that look? Ball of radius 1 about the point x naught. So since x naught is 0, so we must be looking at, we look at all x1 y1 such that mod or all xy coordinates such that mod x plus mod y is less than 1. That is all we are looking at. We are looking at all those points for which mod x plus mod y is less than 1, because the other coordinate is 0, mod x minus 0 plus mod y minus 0. So, we are looking at all those points for which mod x plus mod y is less than 1. So, in this case B1 x naught is the set of all points x naught y naught or xy such that mod x plus mod y is less than 1. Now, let us look at what those points are. Okay. So, let us look at which are all the points in the first quadrant that will go into it, then which are all the points in the second quadrant which will go into this, and which are all the points which are in the third quadrant, fourth quadrant. So, in the first quadrant both x and y are non-negative. So, I am looking at x plus y less than 1. So, this is the line x plus y equal to 1. This is 1 0, this is 0 1. So, if x plus y has to be less than 1, it will be all those points inside that triangle. Now, what will happen on this side? X is negative, y is positive. So, I want x minus x plus y equal to 1, because mod x will be now minus x. So, that will be this line, which will go to minus 1 0. See, again I want points inside that because I want less than 1, and similarly you get this, this is minus 0 minus 1. So, this is what the disk in that language looks like. Okay. The disk in language of that L1 distance looks like a, what do you call that picture? Huh? Go and look up your 8th standard geometry book. Okay. You will tell what that picture is. So, therefore, see, the set is the same, the metric has changed the geometry. Circles look like this, discs look like the interior. Okay. So, what is the circle now? SR S1 x naught, the circle with center x naught and radius 1 is this boundary. Okay. So, it is a very so therefore, what is straight is crooked for somebody else, and what is crooked is straight for somebody else. Okay. So, you thought circle must be like this, for him circle means it is like this. So, therefore, it is a metric that changes the geometry. The geometry is completely changed by using different distance concepts. Okay. So, now let us look, so this sphere now is that the 4 line segments in the picture. Those 4 line segments form the sphere of radius 1 about the point x naught. Well, the same thing will happen at any other point. If your center is some other point, simply shift this whole thing to that point, and then with the center put at that point, it will be the same picture, similar picture will look at. Now, let us look at this. How do things look like here now? Again, let us look at what is the x in this case? Again, R2. What is the distance between x and y? It is the maximum of mod x1 minus y1 and mod x2 minus y2. Okay. So, now let us take the point x naught to be 0 0, and for example r equal to 1. So, what is BR? X naught, that is the set of all points x y such that mod x minus 0 and mod y minus 0, the maximum must be less than 1. The maximum of mod x and mod y must be less than 1. Now, how does that picture look like? Again, look at in the first quadrant. The first quadrant, what it says is the maximum of x and the maximum of y must be 1. So, x coordinate is allowed to go up to 1, y coordinate is allowed to go up to 1. So, you have got this full freedom. If you go anything further, allowed. If you go anything further that side, that is not allowed. Now, you see what is happening. So, this is 1 0, this is 1 1, this is 0 1. Now, on this side again same picture will repeat. This will be minus 1 0, this will be minus 1 1, and this will be minus 1 minus 1, and that will come to 1. So, this square will be the circle. This is squaring the circle. They say you cannot square the circle. There is a famous problem in mathematics. Can you square the circle? Well, you can square the circle if you change your metric. Okay? The circle became a square now. Okay? So, this is what is SB1x? What is S1x not now? It is that is what S1x not is. Okay? So, strange looking geometry will start coming in. Different metric give different geometry, but the carrier set is the same. Okay. So, therefore, Euclidean geometry is not the only thing. Euclidean geometry refers to that distance L2 to. Okay. Any other geometry is a different geometry. Okay, I will give you one more example so that you get these things straightened out properly. What shall I do? So, let us look at what is this set of all functions real valued defined on AB. The metric is the maximum of f minus g modulus. Okay. So, here the carrier set is the set of all functions from AB to R such that f is continuous, and then the row of fg is the maximum of mod fx minus gx, x belongs to AB. This is the rho infinity. Did I call it rho infinity or rho p? Does not matter where I put it. So, that is the space we are considering. Now, we are looking at geometry in function spaces, some kind of a geometry in function spaces. Now, let us take again the function f to be the 0 function, just like, because everywhere else then we can shift it. So, what is the 0 function? This function. Okay, as I take AB, let us take AB, the function which is just 0 at all the points, that is the 0 function. Now, let us take the radius to be 1, just for 1, you can take any radius, I am just standardizing the radius to be 1. So, now I would like to look at the ball of radius 1 about this point 1. Now, what are points now in this space? Every point is a continuous function. Okay. So, in other words, the points in the are something like paths. See, everything is a path between time 0 to time 1. Okay. Now, we are taking paths as elements of my set. Every path I have defined the distance between two paths. Okay. Now, I am going to define an open ball about a path. Every path is a point for me. What does this mean? This consists of all the elements in that space such that rho infinity fg is less than 1. In other words, the function g cannot differ from f by more than 1. So, what we will do is, we will take the function which differs from this by 1 on this side and minus 1 on this side. Now, if you take any function whose graph lies in this, then mod g minus mod g minus f will be strictly less than 1. So, this is the set of all continuous functions on a B whose graph lies between minus 1 between the lines y equal to minus 1 and y equal to. Okay, so any function which oscillates, can move around only within that space, that continuous function is also is a point in that ball. Okay, so the open ball consists of all those functions, all those continuous functions defined on AB, whose graph is trapped between this minus 1 and plus 1 line. Okay. Now, suppose instead of this f, I take a general f. So, let us now take any function f in. Now, take any f in x. Okay. And what is meant by B or f? So, let us take a B. Let us take the graph of f is like this. Okay, some graph. It is something like this between a and b. It goes like that. Then I want all those functions such that the maximum of mod fx minus gx x in AB must be less than r. How do I get that? Yeah, what I did here was I just lifted this curve by 1 unit up and down. So, similarly, you lift this curve by r units and push it below by r units, and now any curve whose any function whose graph lies in that band will be a candidate for that. So, it will be the set of all g in x such that gx lies between fx minus r to fx plus r for every x in A. It cannot go below more than r, it cannot go above more than r. So, it is lies between these parallel bands. Take the curve, make the parallel band of width r on both sides, and any curve which wiggles between these two bands is a candidate to go into that ball. And what is actually the sphere? Can you tell me what is the sphere now? Say that? No, but exactly, can you tell me some description of that? What does that say? The maximum of the difference must be equal to r. That means it must wiggle inside, but must at least touch this once or this. What? If it does not touch both, the maximum of the difference is less than r. So, in order that the maximum of the difference becomes r, that curve must touch, that function must attain the value fx plus r or fx minus r at least one point x. That all such functions form the sphere. Okay. So, SR So, in this case S R F is equal to the set of all G in X, such that there exists X in AB such that Gx equal to Fx plus R or Fx minus. At least at one point the difference must become R, so that the maximum becomes R, otherwise the maximum will be less than R. And of course, Gx is less than or equal to Fx minus R. It belongs to Fx minus R, Fx plus R for every x. It should be within that band, and it must touch at least once. Then that is a eligible candidate. So now we have the geometry of this open balls, closed balls, and the boundary, the sphere. These three notions we have in any metric space. Whatever metric space we have, the notion of distance gives rise to the notion of this open ball, closed ball, and the sphere of radius r about any point in that metric space. Okay. So, what are the consequences? So, let me first introduce one notion and then probably. So, suppose let us look at the real line now. Okay. This is the metric space, usual metric space, and probably I will give one more example, so worth looking at it. Okay. Let us look at any set X, any non-empty set, and let us say the discrete metric. Look at the discrete metric, and now I am going to look at this. Take any point x in X, and let us take r greater than 0, r greater than 0. So, we want to look at BRX. What is this? It is a set of all points such that rho xy is less than r. That is what the definition is. Okay. Now, let us look at this very carefully. Suppose r is less than 1. Okay. What is the discrete metric? The distance between any two different points is 1, right? And therefore, if the distance has to be less than 1, nobody else is eligible. So, this will consist only of the point, the center, because that fellow has distance 0, so it is less than 1. So, now the whole ball degenerates into a single point. If r is greater than 1, what are all the points? The whole set will come into the picture, because everybody is at a distance 1, which is certainly less than r. So, in this case it is the whole set. So, it is like take it or leave it. You have to say the whole thing, or you just leave the whole thing. Okay. If r equal to 1, what happens? Then also it is only the singleton. Okay. So, this is r less than or equal to 1, it is the singleton, r greater than 1, it is x, the whole space. What is it? SRX then. Again, r less than 1, it is the set of all, okay, let us say this is the set of all y in X, that rho xy is equal to R. Is exactly equal to R. So now, if R is 0, then SRX is X itself. If R is between 0 and 1, it's the empty set. Nobody has a distance half or 1/3. The distance is either 0 or 1. If R equal to 1, what is SRX? X minus X. Because that fellow has distance 0, he is not allowed. And if R is greater than 1, it's again null. Okay. So, very crazy geometries can be generated. We have okay. Let me not get more into that. We have very crazy set of situation that the sphere is empty. Okay. The whole sphere is empty, but there is a center sitting inside. Very peculiar geometries that come into the picture. So now we know what is meant by open ball, open closed ball, and the sphere. Now we will see what are the impacts of this. Gives rise to what is known as automatically a metric induces a topology on the set X. Okay? And that is the aspect that we will discuss in the next class. We'll meet Friday.